morning. My name is Carmen Price, and I'm from Marshall Space Flight Center. I am the Deputy Manager for the Payload Operations Integration Function, and Lybrease Woodard is the Manager for the Payload Operations Integrations Function. Next slide, please. So our overall goal of Payload Operations Integration is to make sure that your ground team and your crew team are well-trained and that we've got operational products built and developed in such a way, integrated in such a way that promotes successful on-orbit operations for your payload. All of our processes are documented in infinite detail in the Payload Operations Handbook, Volume 1. I'm really not going to go through all the details of all those processes today, but I'm going to try to give you some high-level idea of some of these processes and some of the products that we'll be working with you to develop and integrate for your on-orbit operations. Now, you can get access to these procedures at the Payloads 1 server. You'll see the website there. It's a pretty easy account to get. If you'll just go to that website, you can click on the Need Account, and it'll give you those instructions for downloading the application form and the fax number to send it to. Just a side note that if you are a non-NASA employee, we'll be looking for you to have a NASA sponsor for you. Next slide, please. All right, so once you've got your operations concept well underway, pretty well understood, most of our processes take place within the tactical time frame. We do have some support that we'll provide to you in the strategic time frame, and we'll assign 2 key personnel really to help you through these processes. First and foremost will be the assignment of the operations lead. That'll come on shortly after your PIM assignment. The operations lead will help you in the areas of your crew training, your procedure development, and they'll also assist you with some of the other operational products that we require, help you determine what kind of inputs you need to make and formulate those inputs for you. A little later on, really more in the tactical time frame, a payload activity requirements coordinator will be assigned to your payload. They really come online once you have a target flight for when you're going to fly, and they're really going to help you in building the detailed planning requirements that you need to accomplish the on-orbit scheduling of your payload's operations. Next slide, please. All right, so we'll start with crew training, and your operations lead will be a very intimate part of this, and we'll accomplish most of this through our training strategy process. So we'll determine in that process what kind of requirements and the implementation approach that we want to take for your payload. And that will be very dependent on the complexity of your payload. If you have heavy crew interactions, we may need more detailed training hardware available for the crew to train on so they have more precise information beforehand. If you're a simple payload, you may go as far as having onboard training that Amanda alluded to in her pitch for the lean integration. The TST will be convened pretty early in the process. We really do like to do those well before we get into the tactical time frame if possible. If you're manifested late, of course, that'll be one of the first things we'll look to do with you just as soon as we can. It'll be organized by the operations lead, and it'll be supported by you, the payload developer. It'll also be supported by a representative from the astronaut office so that we have the crew perspective on that particular payload and the approach to take for that payload. Your procedure author, if you choose to author your own procedures, in many cases the ops lead, that's a service that we can provide and they will do for you. Amanda also alluded to the payload display review team. They'll also be there to represent any display needs that you have, and we'll have the crew training coordinator there. Crew training coordinator works very closely with the JSC integrated training coordinator she or he will understand the windows of opportunity for scheduling your crew training once we've determined the approach. We'll baseline those requirements once we've decided them. We'll look at your training hardware, your lesson plans, and any other products that we think you or the astronaut office or we think are needed to support adequate crew training. Once that's defined and discussed, we'll look at the schedule for the delivery of that hardware, getting your training hardware to JSC, getting you time to check that out, all those kinds of things. These requirements are configuration managed by the NASA Payload Operations Control Board. The ops lead on your behalf will collect all this information, put it into the data set for you, and process that through the baselining process, keep up to date anything that we need to do. That data set is usually baselined in 2 separate pieces. We generally baseline the hardware portion of the data set early on so that it is well understood and documented what fidelity of hardware you need to deliver for crew training. A little later on, we'll baseline the lesson plans and the curriculum, the amount of crew training time that you need to have scheduled as that becomes more firmed. And typically that's even done after we've done sort of a dry run of your training, so we have a really good idea how much crew time we need to schedule for you, crew training time we need to schedule. Now the crew training window is anywhere from I-18 months to 2 months, and we'll have specific windows along that way where we can look to schedule your payload ops, or your crew training, sorry. Next slide. Okay, so then we go into our planning process. This is really inside of the tactical time frame. And we do have 2 positions within POIF that primarily focus on payload planning. Your PARC, which is assigned on a payload-by-payload basis, and they'll be your primary interface to work with you to determine what sort of resources you need to have in order to accomplish your operations. The payload planning manager is responsible for the development of the integrated on-orbit summary pre-increment. So that's a week-by-week timeline that lays out how you're going to operate or when you will operate during the increment. They'll also lay out any kinds of ground rules or constraints that you may need in scheduling your operations. If you're particularly sensitive to microgravity, you may not want your payload to be scheduled during crew exercise. Any of those kinds of constraints that you have to really make sure we get you scheduled, KU requirements, data requirements, those kinds of things. So your activity requirements, you're working hand in glove with your PARC, and they are going to collect these requirements and put them into the user requirements collection tool. This is a service we also offer. You may choose to do that as a payload developer on your own, or you may request that your PARC do that for you. They'll be looking to collect power, data, thermal, your on-orbit crew time resources, video resources, any photo TV activities that you need to have performed, those kinds of things they'll be looking to document in the user requirements tool. These requirements are also configuration managed by the NASA Payload Operations Control Board, and as I said, the PARC will be happy to take this information on your behalf and put it into the system for you. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk about a few of the other flight products that you'll have to develop along the way, or that we'll work with you to develop. The crew ops procedures. Your procedure author, as I said earlier, you may choose to do that yourself, or our operations lead can do that on your behalf, act as a member of your team for you. We traditionally have crew procedures associated with the different operations phases or tasks during the mission. You may need crew procedures for your installation setup, of course your nominal operations if you have any particular maintenance activities that need to be performed, and of course shutdown of your payload. The crew procedures, really depending on where your operations are occurring, can go down 2 different paths. If your operations are being done solely on the International Space Station, those payload procedures are maintained and accessed electronically in a procedure viewer on board and on ground. The shuttle crew procedures are still paper-based products. The ISS procedures we configuration manage through our Payload Operations Control Board, our PODFCB. The shuttle crew procedures are actually configuration managed and maintained by Mission Operations Directorate here at JSC. So we'll work with you to build those procedures, and we will work those procedures through the MOD process for you. Next slide. Ground command procedures. These are step-by-step instructions for our POIF cadre to command and control or monitor your payloads if there's anything that we need to do in support of your payload, and also for the ISS systems. At a minimum, we will require that you provide us commands to safe your payload. Now, you may also choose to have us to do some commanding and monitoring on your behalf. If you're going to do that, there are a couple of different things that we need to have in place from you. We will require that we have ground command procedures so that we understand specifically which commands to send when, and if there's any particular time wait between those commands that need to be sent. This will be something that we'll develop with you and that we will review and agree to together so that we all understand precisely what the POIC cadre will be doing on your behalf. We'll also require that a payload regulation be developed, and I'll talk a little bit later about payload regulations and what those are, to authorize us to do that on your behalf. We actually have 7 volumes of ground command procedures that we use. Volume 3 is specific to the payload procedures. The other volumes are dedicated to our command and control for the ISS systems and the other facilities that we operate on board the International Space Station, such as Express, Wharf, Melfi, or MSG. These procedures are also configuration managed by the Payload Operations Control Board. Next slide. Flight rules. Okay, these are under the configuration management of MOD, so we are looking to provide inputs to this product. Flight rules are really very focused on providing our flight controllers, not just the POIC, but also our flight directors and other MOD flight control positions that help us in the accomplishment of some of our payload operations, to give them real-time decisions that have already been made for them. So there's not a lot of discussion that has to take place. It's something that we can go through fairly quickly. We'll be looking to you as the payload developer to help us collect inputs to provide to MOD for inputs for your procedure. These are really focused on off-nominal conditions for your payload and really focused primarily on crew and vehicle safety. And then we'll go into payload regulations. Those are configuration managed and owned by the Payload Operations Integration Function cadre. They are really also focused in on off-nominal situations, but may include some nominal operations. They are also kind of pre-made decisions or pre-made responses that you want to take on your behalf for the payload. And they are usually not related to crew or vehicle safety. So these are really to just help smooth out your operations. You know, for instance, if you are a continuously powered payload, we do have events that happen on the station that we may lose power briefly. You may need to document the amount of time your payload can go without having power. And that will give us that ready response, something that we can take forward and work with the MOD flight control team to regain power for your payload quickly. And the payload regulations are configuration managed by the NASA Payload Operations Control Board. Next slide. Okay, so ground support training, and this is really talking about your payload developer team training. What are you going to do to train to be ready to support real-time operations? All those requirements are documented in the Payload Ground Support Personnel Training and Certification Plan, Volume 3. That document is also on the POIF website. We're looking to you to tell us, to identify what your operations support team needs to look like, and that's going to be very dependent on what your payload is trying to do. You may need to be able to do ground commanding. There may be any number of things that you need to have specific members of your team trained and certified to do. We'll kind of work through this with you as part of the training strategy team. Through that process, we'll have a ground support integrator there that can help you formulate what your ops along with your ops concept, what your ground support team should look like. You are responsible for making sure that your ops team is trained, and we really recommend that training include detailed knowledge of your experiment and mission operation objectives, as well as your payload hardware and your operations, so that when you're sitting on console, whoever is sitting on console for you during those real-time operations can respond to those questions as they come forward, either from the cadre or from the crew. We require you to have some POIF interface training. That can be done in a couple of different ways. We're happy to give that training to you, to each member of your ops team, or you can employ a method that we call train the trainer process, where you can identify a point of contact to us, and we will train that individual, and they can go back to your PD site and train the rest of your ops team to support real-time ops. Next slide. We also have cadre payload developer simulations, and these are usually conducted about 6 to 3 months prior to launch, and we may do these for a specific increment. We may do them for a specific flight. We really do like to have our payload developers participate in these sims. I think it's an opportunity for you to practice how you're going to operate in real time. It's also a very unique opportunity for the POIF cadre to gain some experience on your nominal and potentially off-nominal payload operations before we go into flight. It's a really good opportunity to practice those interfaces, to give you an opportunity to employ some of the processes that I'll talk to you about a little bit later on this morning. You will be contacted by our SIM team, and they will work with you to identify any particular events that you want to interject into a SIM. If you want to just have a nominal SIM for your payload operations, or if there's a specific sequence of your operations that you want to practice or want to practice with us, we can work with you to get those specific requirements tailored and into the timeline to support you, the simulation timeline. Next slide. Okay, and I believe this is my last slide. We have our ground data support requirements team located at the Huntsville Operations Support Center, and they will work with you through your PIA letter. There are ground data services tables in your PIA that you'll fill out to identify what sort of facility services that you need to have made available to you: commanding, video, telemetry, health and status, your voice communications. They'll also set you up with the payload information management system, all those kinds of things, so that you can access all of that data, do all of those functions remotely from your PD site. They're looking to get that information at about 13 months prior to increment start, and they'll look to establish those services to you about 8 months before, so that you'll have time to log in and check out and verify that all those interfaces are working the way you need them to work. And that's all I have. Any questions?
As a payload safety guy, your example of if the payload loses power, you want to have the information to know how soon the power needs to be put back on. As a payload safety guy, any payload needs to be able to be safe without services. So it's a desired to have the power back on, but please don't let them think that they can guarantee that we'll
Correct.
get power back to them.
Absolutely correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.